Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm very glad to be connected with all of you. Welcome back to the Smart Cities and Sports Summit. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, welcome to this very special edition of the Smart Cities and Sports Summit exclusively online. This year we have decided to focus on the SDGs, on the Sustainable Development Goals, and how sport can be a powerful tool in order to achieve the SDGs. We started this morning with 2 sessions already, trying to cover quite a lot of different topics, from youth empowerment to peace and sport, and most important, maybe partnership. For us, we have the strong conviction that build collaboration, build strong alliance and partnership is a key asset to the success. And I'm very glad to say that we have had very strong support in order to organize this year's summit. I should, of course, mention the city of Lausanne, which is obviously hosting the summit anyway, even if it's only virtual for you. But also GIFES, the Global Association of International Sports Federation, and the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. Therefore, I'm very glad now to show you a message pre-recorded by the IOC President Thomas Bach to welcome you.
Dear friends, because of the unprecedented global coronavirus pandemic, we are all living with much uncertainty. This is why this Smart Cities and Sports Summit comes at a very important time. I would like to congratulate the World Union of Olympic Cities under the great leadership of my mayor, President Grégoire Junot, for having overcome the many challenges to make this year's summit possible. We are all still learning every day. While the crisis is far from over, I hope very much that the first lesson we all learn from this crisis is we need more solidarity. Solidarity within societies and solidarity between societies. As countries and cities around the world are starting the long journey of recovery from the pandemic, this summit is sending an important message. Sport is ready to contribute to rebuild a more human-centered and inclusive society. The United Nations recognized sport as an important enabler to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This crisis has made it clearer than ever that sport is the low-cost, high-impact tool par excellence for all countries in their recovery efforts. Sport and physical activity contribute directly to physical and mental health. We have seen this over the past few months, in particular in times of lockdown, social distancing, and uncertainty. Sport has a great social significance by being the glue which bonds the communities together. Sport plays a significant economic role. It creates jobs, generating business activity. In short, sport is contributing to the recovery from the crisis on the health, the social, and the economic side. By bringing together past and future Olympic host cities, the World Union has an essential role to amplify this important message about the contribution of sport to society. With this summit, you are highlighting the role of sport in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals and in shaping the post-corona world. Over the past weeks and months, we have all seen more clearly than ever that we are always stronger together. This crisis offers us not only challenges, but also opportunities. So let us seize these opportunities, as we are used to in sport, by giving it our best and embracing change. In this Olympic spirit of solidarity, diversity and change, I wish you fruitful discussion and a successful Smart Cities and Sport Summit 2020. All the very best.
I'm very grateful to the IOC President for this message, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the IOC and more specifically the Department of Legacy and Sustainability and the Director Marie Salois. I can say that without the support of the IOC, this summit wouldn't have been possible. We have in common the same idea that sport is really a part of the solution, and more specifically for the post-COVID society. And I'm glad to offer you tonight 2 new sessions. I would like now to introduce the moderator, because as I mentioned this morning, and I'm sorry if you are following us since the very beginning of the day, but the pandemic comes with a lot of unexpected situations. And from our side, we unfortunately learned that our moderator, Caroline Anderson, become ill on Sunday, so we needed to find an alternative solution. And I am very, very lucky and very grateful to have fantastic colleagues and friends that are able to jump in this summit to facilitate the different session. And I'm very glad to welcome Bill Morris for this evening session. For those of you who are familiar with the Smart Cities and Sports Summit, Bill is really a member of the family. He has been the moderator of the summit, I guess, for the last 7 years already, almost, I think, since the very first edition together. So we decided not to work together this year because of the limitation, the restriction of travel between UK and Switzerland, and then we ended up to be together again. So I'm very glad and grateful that you could join finally from London. Hello, Bill.
Very much indeed, Melanie. How I wish I could be with you all in Lausanne this evening. It's over 8 months, I think, since I was in Lausanne, and I wish I could still be there. But there is, I suspect, a hotel just down the road from where you are now that's probably rather glad I'm not, because when I was last there back in February, I left them a pile of my dirty laundry waiting to pick it up the next time I visited a week later. Well, they still have it, so I may not be welcome back. Anyway, enough of me washing my dirty laundry in public. Welcome to all of you, our seasoned friends from summits past and many new friends who've joined us online this time. Wherever you are in the world, it's great to have you with us. And welcome to our session, as Melanie said, all about innovation. We heard President Bach there talking about seizing any opportunities we possibly can from the hiatus that COVID-19 has thrust upon us. I can't help thinking of a quote from Winston Churchill late in the Second World War when he demanded, "Never waste a good crisis." Well, as in so many aspects of the global pandemic, the effects of COVID-19 have not just been traumatic, but they appear to have accelerated a number of existing trends and changes, not least in sport. Already, we were seeing shifts in the pattern of sport participation. In some areas, clubs and associations struggle already to attract a traditional clientele. Meanwhile, new generations are seeking out sport on their own terms, when and where they want it. And now the pandemic has thrown a further massive disruption into that pool. So what are the implications and what are the opportunities of such innovations for cities and sports? If you've had experience of this kind of change, or perhaps you've got great examples of innovations that work to share from your own city, then please use the chat function to tell us all about them, or indeed to raise questions for our speakers. We have an expert to lead the way, followed by 2 case studies, one from a US city and one from an international federation, both with stories of innovation in sport to share. Now, our expert is from the world of sports medicine. I think he's also a top-notch basketball player. He's worked for the Swiss Federal Office for Sport and at Stanford University, but now he heads health and performance at l'Hôpital de la Tour Swiss Olympic Medical Center in Geneva. His daily work with athletes and patients has motivated a passion for innovation in exercise, activity, and sport. Please welcome live from Geneva, Dr. Boris Gojanovic. Boris, over to you.
Hello everyone. Hello, Bill, and thank you very much for the introduction. So, we don't have a lot of time, and I could be talking about the topic at hand for hours because it is so essential and so important. Yet innovation is something that can take many shapes and forms. So I'm going to take a standpoint from the health perspective. I am a sports medicine doctor, and sports comes first, but actually medicine should be first and always should be first. So health is at the forefront of the discussion here. And we'll see how, obviously, today's topic with the development goals really brings all that together. So let me bring you a few points on how we approach physical activity and health. And if we can move to the next slide, please. So this is how I'd like to approach it: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, you may remember the movie. It's also a tribute to Ennio Morricone, who passed away not too long ago. But let's move forward and see what I mean by this. Next one, please. So the good is physical activity and health-related outcomes. So on this slide, you have a few pictures that show you a little bit what physical activity means for health. At the top left, of course, you have cardiovascular health and everything that has to do with mortality, early morbidity, people suffering from diseases. And if they stay active, if they have a higher fitness level, they will have less early morbidity, so disease, especially cardiovascular disease. So staying fit for a long time could lead you to be like Mr. Marchand, who's riding his bike after 100 years old on the second picture. But it's also important for your daily activity as a professional to be ready to meet the challenges of today's world. There's always a lot of pressure. There's always new challenges that come your way. And being fitter helps you cope with them. But it also means that if you're fitter, you're taking the time to be fit. So you're using also time to recover and to benefit from whatever activity you're doing. And we know also that your cognitive activity or ability will benefit from regular physical activity. Of course, extremely important for kids. And we know it especially at a time like this, where in Geneva, for example, the State Council has just ordered sports teams and clubs to stop the activities for kids, and this is a problem. Also, people who are seniors who may be suffering from limitation of movement may use aids, like that second picture at the bottom left. Staying fitter helps you to do your daily activities. And ultimately, at the bottom right is healthcare costs. So a fitter population that benefits more from physical activity has less diseases, costs less to society. So all of these elements flow into what's good. So how can we help people be more active? Let's say using technology. There's many things out there, but let's see, next slide, please. What's not very new, actually. This is the pedometer, and it's already been there from the 60s in Japan. So, but what we know is that this simple device that everybody has now, so you have it in your smartphone, you can have it in your smartwatch, and it just measures how many steps you take. And they're fairly accurate if you wear them all the time. And we know that if somebody does more steps than they used to, if you increase your number of steps per day on a regular basis, you will increase your fitness and you will improve your health. Very simple way to use technology. Nothing fancy there. You all have it, but yet there's so many people who don't use it and who don't even know what to do with it. So that's one aspect of technology that could be used better. And we know that if we tell someone how to use it, basically where to look for the numbers, they might increase their daily count by 1,000 to 3,000 steps. And if the aim is to go anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day, you already done a good job by increasing that much. So let's move to the next slide and show a case study. This is the typical problem that we see. Let's say a 56-year-old gentleman who stopped exercising in the 90s, who's put on 30 kilograms. He's lost, he's put it back on, done a lot of cycling of his weight through different diets, and we know there's so many diets out there. And he's got arthritis, he's got hypertension, and he's got obesity. So he's basically a ticking bomb. And he's also been told that exercise is bad for his hips, so he should avoid exercising. So not a good starting situation. Now let's see what we can do on the next slide. The traditional approach, which may be not innovative, but which is what we should be doing a lot more, and we're not doing enough of that, is to give good counsel on what type of exercise they can do. Use a wearable device. It may be a pedometer. It may be something that tracks GPS movement as well. And setting goals for steps, for example. This patient had also dieting counseling by some of our advisors that are pictured here. And then also was considering buying an e-bike to go to work. So basically that's it, very simple advice. But it was teamwork at play, and on the next slide you can see the result. Now obviously this person was motivated and wanted to introduce a lifestyle change. But over the course of 2 years, there's 14 kilos lost, which is 12% body mass. It was gradual with a bit of tapering along the end. But for 2 years, it's a very good result. And we know that the cardiovascular risk of that person has diminished. Health has dramatically improved, not to say mood and wellness in general. So please move to the next slide. And one advice was just to take the bike to go to work. So we would simply map the road to work and say, okay, this is doable. You know, if you get your e-bike, you could do this. It's 7.5K each day. Out and back, it's 15K. You're going to get a little bit of exercise. Now, next slide. Tracking walking through the wearable. We could counsel the person from a distance using the device and simply log in onto the platform and see how many steps per day that person was doing, and it kept increasing to get to 10,000 steps per day on average. So next slide. This is an example of how you could use it and somebody just accepts the device and the uses. But the problem with these tools is if you just hand a device like that to someone, it won't necessarily be sufficient. So next slide. We know this from any kind of novelty. You get tired of it. There's that novelty effect, and this is a study that looked at how much people use the device during a study where they had an incentive period, so they would be helped and counseled, and then after a few months they would stop using it. So one possibility is that they stopped using it because they felt confident doing without the device, which is the optimistic view, and that would be great. And actually technology could be just a tool, transient tool, and that would be great. Next slide. Another problem with technology, or let's say social media and exercise platforms, let's say like Strava, is that basically what people are doing is they're trying to beat themselves every time. You're trying to become the king of your track every time, or your mountain, your own personal mountain. So every time you go, you need to do better. And that's not how training works. And I've seen quite a few people that have started exercising and used devices like that or logging what they do. and they need to get medals every time, and they get tired and they get injured and it doesn't work. So comparison and faster is better and rankings are not the way to sustainable physical activity for health. So 2 clicks, please. Next one, yeah. So there's also a lot of apps out there, and they promise you in 7 minutes you can get fit. So you can do all of these interval trainings, HIIT sessions, there'll be burners, cardio, burpees, and whatnot. And here's one that's pretty popular, and it promises you that you can actually get some results you don't have a minute wasted, or you'll compete with friends, etc. Now, please click. And out of those 6 elements, I'd say, well, creating a habit is a good thing. Having customized workout is a good thing, but all of the others are not really sustainable. Yeah, motivation can be pushed a little bit, but they're not the best ones. Click, please. Other apps promise you these types of things, okay? The typical before and after picture. And next click, we end up seeing people posting these things, and that's supposed to motivate and incentivize people. Now, I'm not really sure, and the message is not the correct one, because this is not enabling people to be physically active for their health, and it can be very much counterproductive and promoting images of something that's not necessarily extremely healthy or that's not attainable for some people. Next slide. So what we've done during the pandemic at Latour is we've developed an e-coaching program, basically trying to get people within their homes and possibly having them order a little bit of equipment, but very minimal equipment, and give them a program of things that's doable and that's going to get them moving, activate their muscles, introduce their break, some movement into their breaks from their home office place. And we've had pretty good success with that. And I think in times of pandemic, this definitely needs to continue. And we're facing probably other lockdown periods, and we need to continue on that way. Next, please. And sometimes it gets ugly. You know, people use devices, and when they don't function, like Garmin that was hacked in July, people get very angry. It's like they can't do without their device. And then you're thinking, okay, am I doing exercise to post it somewhere, or am I doing exercise to stay fit? So then the motivation might become a problem. Next slide. Taking it to further extremes, maybe you've watched The Social Dilemma, which is a popular documentary at the time, or you've watched an episode of Black Mirror that looks at what social media can do to society. Well, social media in sports can be a problem as well, and on some of the aspects that we already discussed. But when people start isolating and using platforms and devices for something that's not pushing their own personal health or their collective health, then it's a problem. Next slide. So what do we do now? And we have this pandemic, so we can move on to the next one, please. First, important to recognize the starting point and the guidelines that are out there. Now, WHO has been working for years on the global activity plan for physical activity. And that's the document in the middle here. Very good document that they've published a year and a half ago. And it talks about how to create active societies, active places, and active environments. And this is very good for cities to look at models and frameworks that you can apply to every project. Next slide. With regards to sporting organizations, obviously, we need to move beyond traditional approaches. So the club that has training sessions for their members, but then not for other people. And if they shut down, and if like during a pandemic, the activities are being shut down, then nothing else happens. We've all experienced it in the last few months, where maybe our kids, and I've experienced that, are members of some clubs, and then all of a sudden nothing else happens. So we need to move to other ways of promoting exercise through sporting associations, but that move beyond the setting in which they usually operate. So that's adaptability. New context requires some evolution, and we need to consider the wants of the peoples in today's day and age and environment. Digital technology is a tool, and we need to be using it, but the purpose needs to be clear. Mr. Bach mentioned, mental health is part of it, and socialization definitely an important component. And in times of lockdown, it's very hard to look at socialization because we're socially distancing. But there's other ways of socializing, and without the ugly components of social networks. It's important to move beyond sports per se and involve communities and families and companies. Now, I would suggest also sporting organizations need to partner with the other actors, and that's the health sector, the education sector, and of course it is happening in many settings, but we can do more of it. Next slide. So obviously, we need to understand users and what they want, what they can do legally now also, what they're doing regularly, how they're doing it, and how we can improve it. This is the human-centered design, and there's approaches to look at that, and I think these methods should be definitely applied. And again, Thomas Bach pointed to the human-centered component, and this is extremely important. So next slide. I like to consider projects and any complex problem that you have under the lens of a design thinking approach. There's the human, there's technology, and there's the business side of it, and in the middle lies innovation. What is a healthy city to you? What is a healthy sporting organization that promotes health and physical activity for the citizens, but also for the economic partners? And we've seen on the slide before that it was, what can people do? How are they doing it? But ultimately, it's the why we are trying to do things. And I think their sporting organizations need to put a strong focus on health, on sustainable health, on bringing people together and moving beyond the usual sports. Next slide, please. One way cities have been doing that is through the Global Active City project and labeling. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're not, you should look it up because it's a fantastic project supported by the IOC. Of course, it means using the spaces out there according to the WHO program and global activity plan. Now that's not necessarily possible in times of pandemic, although there's not strict lockdowns everywhere, and the places and spaces can be used to promote physical activity. Next slide, please. Now, with that being said, I'll conclude here that little overview of how I approach health, and obviously this is a very quick summary of a few points. We're far from this depiction of a city where there's a strong community and people are being active and they're playing together outside. And obviously we have to reflect on that when we are facing times of pandemics. We need to look at new approaches so that people can still be together, participate together, work on their physical conditioning and their mental health, but maybe without the usual component of physical contact in the next few months. Thank you.
Boris, thank you so much. Some fascinating insights there. I can certainly empathize with all that experience with apps, having tried many. I'm also struck by the fact that given the pandemic, it has disrupted so many of our lifestyles. For some, that has meant they have had less opportunity or less motivation to take exercise, get fit, do sport, and have suffered the consequences. Others have found that it's brought on new opportunities. I wonder what your experience is, Boris, of the proportion you're coming across who have seen this as an opportunity or who have had opportunities presented to them by their active cities or by sports organizations to enable them to take advantage of the change in the lifestyle that we've all been forced to have.
Well, I think, we all have our biases in the people we see and the experiences that we're facing. But what I've seen is that I think it's just like the usual. You know, there's people that are curious and that want to adapt, and there's people that struggle in the face of adversity. And it's just like athletes, when they get hurt, some of them see that as an opportunity. Don't let a good crisis go by, you know, without acting on it. And the opportunity, you seize it and you do what you can with it. Some people know how to do that. Some people struggle with it. Our role, my role as a healthcare professional, is to be there and to maybe show a little path that they can walk on. It's enabling them to see a bit of light in the crisis, that they can use this for their own good and the good of their families, their kids, their other colleagues, and people that they connect with during those difficult times.
Boris, thank you very much. If you'll stay with us if you can, please, because we're now going to hear a couple of case studies, and if there's time, I'd love you to reflect on them at the end. So now to the first of those case studies, and we're traveling to the US state of Virginia and to the tough and challenged city of Richmond, a city with well above average crime and poverty levels. And we're going to hear about innovation from an organization called Sports Backers. Their mission is, quote, to inspire people from all corners of our community to live actively. Our speaker is an Olympian in kayak, and I hope we'll hear from him live later on in the discussion. But he's recorded his case study all about innovation from Sports Backers. So please welcome its Executive Director, John Lugbill.
Richmond, Virginia is a great place. We have 1.2 million people that live in our region, and we're 2 hours south of Washington, D.C., and we're about an hour away from the Atlantic Ocean and about an hour away from the Appalachian Mountains. So we're a very diverse city and have a great active outdoor scene. The Sports Backers mission is to inspire active living in all corners of our community, and we accomplish that mission by working with hundreds of area partners, by having fitness classes in low-income communities, by advocating for bike and pedestrian infrastructure, creating kids' run clubs at low-income schools all over the region, and having major sporting events to celebrate an active lifestyle. So our Let's Go RVA message is really kind of our shorthand for Richmond, Virginia is RVA. And so it's kind of the fun, cool way to say it. And Let's Go RVA is really getting back to trying to have more of a carrot approach to encouraging physical activity, which those of us in the sports world tend to do naturally. But people in the health world tend to say what's going to go wrong if you don't do something. They tend to use the stick approach. And that's not very inspiring or motivating. So most people don't want to be told you're going to get heart disease or diabetes if you're not active. That doesn't motivate or inspire anybody to change their behavior. So we wanted to have something that was a little more positive. So Let's Go RVA was trying to create a movement and trying to create positive. What's a real challenge for people that are working to get a whole community active is that there's been a lot of bad experiences. You know, I was fortunate enough to be an Olympian, and I loved gym class. I loved being active. That was the best part of my day. But there's a lot of people that's not the case. And gym class was something they didn't like, and there's kind of a built-in part of our community that sees active living as a negative, and they think of it as how good they are at a sports game or competition. And so turning that around and saying, you know what, you don't have to think of it as a competition. Walking your dog is physical activity. Having more bike and pedestrian emphasis, so it's easier to walk to a coffee shop or a restaurant. Having a way that it's easier to get around your community on a bike rather than by car. Having different ways that society's kind of built to be more active. And then making sure that everybody feels included. If you just have elite athletes, who look like elite athletes, then it's intimidating. So breaking down those barriers, coming up with ways that everybody feels included and there's a way for them to be involved, those are kind of the secrets to get people moving on a community-wide scale. Yeah, so innovation is really important to staying relevant. During COVID in particular, we've had to really put in a very aggressive plan to innovate and create new product. We actually have a modified design sprint process that we actually use to create new events, and we go from an event concept to a product to test with consumers in a 1 week period. And it's very concentrated and very aggressive. And we've all been part of brainstorming meetings where, 3 weeks later you go back and like, what did we talk about? But if you really jam them all together and you have decision makers in part of the timeline and you prearrange all those meetings, we were able to create new events within a week. So we have created 10 new events so far that are virtual events some have taken place and some are yet to come. And I think it would be great to show one of our videos of the Great American 5000, and you can see what we mean by creating a team concept. And we had 4,700 people take part this past summer, virtually running across the United States as part of teams. Well, you just saw the video of the Great American 5000, and we're certainly thrilled with that. And we followed that up with a Great European 2500, so a race across Europe. We also just put together in our marketing 7 marathons on 7 continents, and it's really fun. You would do this individually, and once you get done with one marathon, you bump onto the next one, the next continent, and you could just accumulate your miles, a few miles at a time, or you can do it full-blown marathon by marathon. So we're really excited about that one. The imagery is just unbelievable. And you get to run anywhere you want, right? You don't have to worry about getting permission or police or anything. So it really is a neat virtual concept. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we have these program names and all these things that break everything out. But the biggest thing that I'm proud of is us switching from thinking of sports as an end in itself, instead of thinking sports as being a tool for motivating active living in our community. So we have 250,000 people in our database because they take part in our events. we now call those wellness celebrations. They're still events, and out in the public, each one. But sports is fun. It's exciting. It's something that gets people's attention. They get a lot of media, and so sports can be a great vehicle for getting people in. And what we did is we turned that upside down. And we said, once we get them in, they can be our advocates out in the community. We call it active RVA, how we activate the whole Richmond region. And so that initiative to really think, kind of flipping it upside down, that sports is a subset of this active living movement, that was just a game changer for us. And for the past 9 years, that's what we've been working on. And it really changes why you get up in the morning. It changes how you think about the impact of your events in the community. Events are still really important, and I think there's a great way that we've done that. And one of the events that really works well for us in that format is our Dominion Energy River Rock. And we have a video to show of that, so you can see how active outdoor living is promoted here in Richmond through a sporting event. Well, I think, when you look back over history and you think of the Olympics and how they started back in ancient Greece, it was really the athletes were thought of as being close to godliness because of their giftedness. And so whether they were elite runners or wrestlers of the different sports, the ancient Olympics. And so they also really put on a pedestal top music performers and actors and actresses, and they made a big deal out of gifted people in their society. And it's kind of interesting because if you think about it that way, today we tend to think too much about the economic impact of an Olympics or how much television exposure or world exposure. We're going to put our city on a world map. And yet, if we go back to that idea that Olympians are especially gifted people that motivate and inspire the rest of society to do things that maybe normal humans can't. And that kind of level of inspiration and motivation is one of the things with the video we just showed of River Rock. We have elite athletes. We have people who actually are Olympians and future Olympians, and rock climbing and kayaking and trail running and all these different sports. And yet we have learned how to try a kayak or get on a wall and go rock climbing. So you can have the inspirational and the entry level all at the same place. And I think with the Olympics, we have a real opportunity to be inspirational for society, to make a difference.
John, thank you very much. We'll hear from John live, hopefully towards the end of the session. But some really inspirational experiences there. And I'm struck by a couple of questions that have come in fact, one from Henk Stokhoff. And he relates, I think, his question to seeing the things you talked about there, John. You talked a lot about the carrot, not the stick, about inclusivity, about innovation through virtual events, as well as connections to sport and to Olympians. But Boris, I wonder if I can raise the question that comes from Henk as a result of that, which is, what's your view about esports, taking the experience from Richmond a stage further, not just virtual events, but esports? Do they have a role to play, do you think?
The infamous esports question. Thank you for that. Okay, that's a tricky one. Now, I'm not an esport connoisseur. In the way it is being used, oftentimes I find that there's no real connection to physical activity and health, and that's a problem, I think. And it's more, engaging into sedentary types of activities. And although there are some esports that show a bit of physical activity and energy expenditure, but I think if you can connect it as a tool to reach more sustainable activity in the outdoor setting, in the community setting, and in promoting movement as a value, as a virtue, and really with health as the goal, and this is the why I was referring to, if you embed that into any esports context, then I could see that as an option.
Thanks, Boris. As you say, that's a big question and it needs longer, but let's move on now. And John, we will try to come back to you later. If others of you have questions for John, for Boris or other speakers, please put them on the chat board. We'll try to get to them if we can. But now to a sport that's full of ideas about how to motivate new forms of participation, and that's basketball. We're going to hear two presentations of what's happening in the International Basketball Federation. Later, we'll be joined by FIBA's Head of Commercial Development, Gustavo Arellano. But first, I'm pleased to welcome Sport and Competitions Director, Predrag Bolosijev. And I'm told you're known by your friends as Boggy. Can we all be your friends and refer to you as Boggy, please?
Yes, you're more than welcome. And obviously, my name is very difficult to pronounce, and this is why I'm absolutely used to be Boggy. Thank you.
Over to you.
As a response to this crisis, COVID-19 crisis, which shut down sport all around the world, FIBA had to develop a number of initiatives and to try to keep our membership engaged during those difficult times. And we did a lot of effort to practically stay connected with our national federations, with our athletes, with our coaches, officials, and all the membership. Difficult time where we could not do our regular activities. We used to develop alternative programs which should help us to be ready for post-COVID period, to become stronger in some areas where we maybe were not that strong in the past, and to use this time to learn, to engage, and also to develop. So I'm really happy to present today one of our initiatives, which is quite specific. That was the first time FIBA did something like this. And to start with, I would like to ask the colleagues in the studio just to start the video, which will present a quick summary of the key elements of our initiative called Skills Challenge. Please go to the video. Next one.
"2020, the year of the pandemic. The impact of COVID-19 on international sport events has been massive.
We agreed to postpone the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020.
The governing body of basketball, FIBA, had to quickly take decisions on its summer competitions. In May, the Under-17 FIBA Basketball World Cups, FIBA's youngest category on a world stage, were postponed. It was a huge blow for these rising stars, set to play at that level for the first time. Players had fought to qualify and were excited to represent their countries. How could FIBA still bring this generation of players together and make youth national teams compete on the global level without international travel and contact between players? Here come the FIBA Under-17 Skills Challenges, an innovative global and digital competition encouraging national federations to bring their teams together and give the players the opportunity to represent their country within a global frame, all in the backdrop of the current pandemic. A special skills drill executed by a team of 5 players as fast and accurately as possible and filmed locally. An opponent doing the same on the other side of the world. 2 videos, 2 team scores. An unknown winner of each challenge, revealed only once videos are combined and streamed on FIBA's digital channels. A success story with 92 teams taking part, over 200 challenges leading up to 2 thrilling finals, and some special moments on social media. After some great performances and many close challenges, the first Under-17 Skills Challenges champions were crowned. China for the girls and Mongolia for the boys. With one final surprise.
Congratulations!
a video call with Australian Olympic silver and bronze medalist Jenny Screen and one of the best power forwards to ever play the game, Dirk Nowitzki, celebrating the winners in a midst of curiosity and excitement. We don't know how long this pandemic will last and impact sports and our world as a whole. Until then, we'll be ready to innovate and find new opportunities for our stars of tomorrow. That's what the skills challenges are all about.
Bye, guys. Yes, we have successfully implemented this skills challenge, under 17 skills challenge this year. And why under 17? Why it is so important for this age category? Actually, 17 years of age is the age when young basketball talents will have a first opportunity to compete at a global level. So this is their first global experience. They managed to qualify for this competition, and it has a special meaning for them and for their future career. Of course, this event they will never forget. And unfortunately, this year we had to cancel a lot of events. But when canceling this under 17, we really felt that this is not the right thing, but we had to do that. We also received a lot of letters from national federations and from players who were actually begging FIBA to find a way to provide them opportunity to compete. So this triggered the discussion on how to find alternative solution, and this is how we came to the idea to organize a skills challenge. So we wanted to provide to those kids who are losing once in a lifetime experience to compete at the global level for the first time. And at the same time, we wanted to encourage federations, motivate them to bring those kids together, although there will be no competition, no official competition, no World Cup, to bring the kids together and provide quality training after the long period of practically where those kids didn't have opportunity to train basketball. Also, we wanted to use this opportunity and also to use our digital platforms to promote those kids, although they will not be competing in the World Cup, but still we wanted to provide alternative solution. We had some positive experience with the skills challenge of different format at some previous events, and we also had a very good experience of skills challenge, which is a regular part of our 3-on-3 events. And we also wanted to benefit of this, and we also managed to find a solution to keep the costs of this initiative, the cost of skills challenge at the acceptable level, which was very important in these difficult times when everyone also has a budget constraints at the same time. So this is why we decided to go for a skills challenge. And just quickly, what exactly the skills challenge is. Next slide, please. This is actually a virtual game which is produced by combining videos which are filmed in different locations around the world. So we have 2 teams competing. Each one of them is filming their performance, sending to the editorial team, and they are combining 2 videos together and practically creating the game. As you were able to see on the video, the opponents, the teams were able practically to see the result only at the moment when the games were published on our social media. We also wanted to keep the national team component, so the teams were participating as a national teams. They were wearing national team jerseys, and they were all eligible national team players. So we wanted really to emphasize this national team component. And finally, initially we wanted just to organize this competition for the teams who were already qualified for the World Cup, under 17 World Cup. But then we realized when we are already doing all the logistics around, we should actually provide this opportunity to as many teams as we can have. So at the end, we opened the possibility to everyone who would like to compete around the world. And we had a real global challenge with the qualifiers at the continental level and the final round, which then included also the teams which were qualified for the World Cup. On the next slide, you will just see a couple of numbers which are relevant for this initiative. So we went really global. We had close to 50 national federations involved, with the 200 plus skill challenges played, and all together 92 national teams who participated in this skill challenge, 44 women's and 48 men teams. Everything was supported, please, next slide. Everything was supported by our platforms. So on FIBA website, we created websites for skill challenges as we normally do for regular events. So it was the competition was well covered with all the elements which are normally there for regular competitions. So those who participated really had a feeling that they really participate in the global competition. But even more success, next slide please, we had with the digital channels, where both on FIBA, social media, but even more on social media participating countries, we had a lot of activation and a lot of promotion, which I think was really exceptionally important for those kids. Finally, last slide, please. We wanted to provide to all participants something that they will remember for the rest of their life. So we actually managed to send some awards to all participants. So all of them received a letter from FIBA Secretary General and FIBA President, and really unique message from two megastars, from Dirk Nowitzki and Jenny Screen, and also some symbolic mini basketball, so they remember about this event for the rest of their life. Of course, the best teams received more valuable awards, and the best players, MVPs, received so much. So I think for everyone involved, this opportunity was very much appreciated, especially for the smaller federations who normally do not have opportunity to compete at the global level. But I think that everyone enjoyed, and we in FIBA really like this initiative.
You're not the only one to like the initiative. I think it's absolutely brilliant. The reason I love it, I suppose, is that it's simple in so many ways. And yet I also think to myself, I wonder if this would have happened in any other circumstance. I'm sure there'll be more questions about that particular model later on if we have time. But let me go straight now to hear about the second presentation from FIBA. They're full of good ideas. And let's join Gustavo, who I think is with Melanie in the studio in Lausanne.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Now we want to speak about the topic you just raised a few minutes ago, which is esports. This was another initiative we managed to explore during the pandemic, and now we will show also a few slides to join the discussion, or to complement my presentation. The idea when we presented the esports, we raised the question of why we will be doing esports. And the first, it's clear, it's growing, not only for people playing, but also more people watching. More people is watching esports properties. We are discussing more about it in international federations, and we knew that through it we could tap into new fans. But also, we knew that it's a way to link with one of our strategic goals, which is enlarge our FIBA family and to grow the game. Finally, it is important for us to highlight that the pandemic was not the reason we started this sport. This was an existing project, and we triggered before. It was raised by few national federations and their activities, and for sure this situation was an accelerator. This contributed to see it in a different way and to do an activity, and again a pilot project, which I will present now. We had to build a team. Internally, I had to co-lead this project with my colleague Nicolas Chapard, from Head of Digital, and we had to also bring people from outside because we didn't have the expertise in-house to run a esports event. We had to look for people who have been in the market looking for this type of developments, and we had to create this. And the decision we took was to learn by doing. We didn't have a long-term strategy for this. We didn't have all the goals set, like different for real for basketball in real life. So we decided to embark in this piloting, and that's how we started the FIBA eSport Open, which at the end was an event on a weekend when we had 17 teams in total. The original goal was to have 6, but then it grew very fast to have 17. We had 5-on-5 basketball from national teams. We gave the federations the possibility to select their players as they would like, meaning they could do a mini tournament to select or handpicked, or to react to what the community was expecting to have as a national team in each territory. We distribute it through social media, our channels, and it's very important to highlight that in this moment we had a perfect canvas to develop this type of events, because we had within the game NBA 2K, in this case the version 20, a very strong Pro-Am mode, which is a mode which allows us to customize players, customize arenas, and customize the uniforms in the game. So this was the perfect setup of alignment to develop an activity with our federations for our federations. So it's important to highlight that esports for us, it's only basketball, it's e-basketball, it's not any other type of games, which it also falls into esports. So this was a bit of the map, the scope of our project. Like I said, we started, the original intention was to involve 6 or 5 teams to try, but at the end up being a 17 countries project. And this is few examples of how we centralized the production. This was a decision in order to control the product and to also be aware of how the community will react to this new version. And here some images on how we produced the event, but I will invite everyone to go to our YouTube channel, the FIBA YouTube channel. You can type in FIBA eSports Open and you will find all the videos on all the games that we had. It was a great experience. Again, was a pilot for us to test and to understand how we could tap into a new area. We knew that we could not copy-paste what we were doing, what we do in basketball in real life. This is a new product that needs a new approach, and this is what we have been doing and learning by doing. Here, some numbers. Maybe the highlight is how we were rated by the national federations and the players after organizing this first event. Of course, 5 million across social media is one of, another highlight. But for us, the important message is that we were able to give, for the first time, to these gamers the opportunity to represent their national team. This was, without any doubt, the biggest reward. For all of them, the experience was unique, and this is hopefully the first step on a series of events. The gaming community reacted very well to the national team pride. It's a key element into the gaming community, and we are happy to start this process or this journey on tapping into esports. Then next, for us, it's still we're still learning. Our next step is a Round 2 Open. It's a second edition of the eSports Open. Now we will have a new game. It was launched in September, NBA 2K21, but now we will have more than the double of the federations we had before. The pilot project did the work of embracing or showing more federations the opportunity to join. And this is very good news for us, because the idea of this project is to create a platform for our federations and create development opportunities. And again, we will be using the Pro-Am mode, which allows this level of customization for everyone to play as the national team. Few improvements in the format, few improvements in the distribution, but something that we will announce very soon. Now, for the long term and our perspective in esports, it's an alignment exercise. NBA is the owner of the game with Take-Two Interactive, which is the studio owning, or the publisher owning 2K. They both produce NBA 2K. They are the owners of the game. So FIBA alignment with these two entities is key for making sure that these platforms are developed for our national federations. It's clear that our gamers and our community are craving for LAN events, or events where all the gamers are in the same place, events that we could host in different cities connected to our events or as a standalone events. For the situation now, it's something that we see in a later stage. But our goal and the first steps on setting this vision is to create the proper platform to provide our national federations opportunity to develop, an opportunity to engage with a new audience, an opportunity to enlarge our family through basketball, through our game, making our game stronger, and this is our path. Now, we like to say that, again, I can say it again, we are learning by doing. When we started this process, we were not experts on the esports, like Professor Boris says, we didn't know in detail how to develop a property. Now, we are a few months already advanced, and we hope that this is just the start of a long-term journey where we can continue giving our federations potentially a third discipline. We have basketball, we have 3x3, and now we could have e-basketball. So this is the takeaway, and I hope that this is a motivation for our federations to continue working and platform for engagement for our fans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. And really interesting to see the esports idea alongside what we heard earlier from Bogi. And in just a moment, I've got to go to Boris and get his appraisal on those. But before I do so, can I go to John in Richmond? I hope you can hear us, John. Are you there, John? Oh, maybe John's dropped off the line for the moment. Are you there, John? I can see John, but I'm not sure he can hear me. Can you hear me, John?
Maybe he's frozen.
I tell you what, whilst we try and fix the line to John, let's go to Boris and ask for your comments on the two case studies we've seen, the one from Richmond and the two from FIBA.
Well, first of all, I mean, kudos to FIBA for, I mean, basketball is my sport. And as you can see, I mean, I'm wearing a Dražen Petrovic jersey. I mean, it's great to have brought innovation into this pandemic and trying to connect people. And I think the youth program with the skills challenge is a brilliant idea. And it's also an opportunity to develop it further. Because I definitely think that all the kids that play, not just national team players, but just all the kids would love to participate in the skills challenge. And you could find out that some of these kids that are not playing at a high level in teams can also have very good skills. So that's fascinating. With regards to the esport, I mean, I made my comment before. I think alignment across sectors is important. Alignment within the business with the NBA and FIBA is, of course, important, but then you need to bring that next step of alignment for the purpose of the program. And I think part of the purpose should be healthy people, healthy activity, and esports can contribute to that, but should not be the sole goal.
Thank you, Boris. Let's just see if we can hear John, or whether John can hear us now. Can you hear us, John? Because I have a question for you.
No, it doesn't work, Bill. I'm sorry.
I think it's frozen.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to say we'll pass the question on to John, and maybe he can come back, because Rita has raised a question on the chat all about whether the extent to which disabled people are able to participate in the program in Richmond. And I'm sure that John would want to answer that. So we'll pass that on to him, and he'll get back to us later on. But for now, I'm going to have to call an end to this particular session, because our second session is about to start. I found that a fascinating insight into how the tough times of COVID have generated ideas and innovation to involve people in activities. So for that, could I say a very big thank you to Boris, to John, to Bogi, and to Gustavo. Thank you very much indeed. We need to move straight on to our last session on day one, and we're focusing on what's happened to revenues and the business of sport. Amidst the carnage and the cancellations, there have also been some hints of innovation and new business models. Well, shortly we'll hear from the world of cycling and from the sunshine state of Florida. But first, let's get a summary of the facts and figures and analysis of what's going on in sport business. In a video presentation of their special report, here's PricewaterhouseCoopers Director of Sport Business, David D'Elia.
Welcome to our Sports Survey, our annual study about the state of the sports industry. Before we explore this year's report, I'd like to share with you some highlights. As this year's title say, after getting hit hard by COVID-19, the sports industry is somewhat rebooting, somehow dusting off and looking for a new floor. Sports leaders tell us that annual growth expectations for the next 3 to 5 years are at 3.3%, down from 8% during the last 3 to 5 years. About 30% of respondents estimate growth to be 0 or lower.
Hello.
Unsurprisingly, the biggest threat to growth is seen in the direct impact of the health crisis.
Hello.
And the reduced ability to invest and innovate because of that. Recovery from COVID-19 is expected to be a hardest journey, with 43% of respondents expecting this to last until 2022. But not everything is green. Sports leaders also see significant opportunity to grow revenues, particularly in 3 areas. First, improving fan experience through digital media. Second, creating and monetizing digital assets. And third, innovating packaging and distribution of media rights and sponsorship rights. As a matter of fact, our respondents went a step further and told us that as a direct outcome of the COVID-19 crisis will be an acceleration of investment towards digitalization and, as they do so, increase collaboration with other stakeholders. As part of this year's edition, we also delved into the changing sports media landscape, which has been undergoing significant disruption over the last years. Sports leaders confirmed that on-demand, non-event related content is expected to feature the highest degree of growth, well ahead of live content. This only underscores the importance for rights owners to shape their narrative around always-on IP, as opposed to live events only. Responses we got also show that traditional broadcasters continue to suffer under the stigma of being the disrupted ones. Perhaps, I would dare to say, unfairly. We think traditional media companies are well positioned to capture opportunities with their experience in storytelling and audience management. But clearly, they need to pivot their business model. More of the same just won't cut it. We also looked at esports as part of this year's publication, as curious as one could possibly be to see how things developed during the sports chapters. We did so by analyzing the number of hours streamed and watched across the biggest titles since January 2020. What did we learn? First, we learned that action, fantasy, and shooter games are a much more mature media product compared to simulated sports. First week of January, across the biggest 10 accounts on Twitch and YouTube, we tracked over 500 million hours watched against 5 million for simulated sports. So a ratio of 1 to 100. Second, we noticed a huge spike of hours streamed and watched right after lockdown in mid-March. Action, fantasy, and shooter games got an uplift of 50% compared to pre-COVID. Simulated sports grew by a staggering 300%. However, once real sports came back, viewership of simulated sports decreased despite a sustained number of hours streamed. Viewership of action, fantasy, and shooter games seemed to have maintained that uplift. So, how to look at this? The cup can be half full or half empty. You could think that simulated sports as a viewership product is structurally weak as it gets cannibalized by its real version. Or you could think that this is only the start of the journey for simulated sports to become a true viewership product. Our respondents seem to see the cup rather half full. 54% agree that simulated sports will eventually become a viewership product. But it's a long game, requiring patience and time. Thanks for your attention. I hope you enjoy our report.
Yes, thank you, David. Plenty to get our teeth into there. There's so many facts and figures. And in a way, it was the perfect bridge from the first session this evening, discussing the way in which the relationship between esports and real live sports can develop. Well, over the last couple of decades, I guess cycling has generally been a sport and an activity on the boom. But how has that particular sport coped with the pandemic? Well, let's find out with the Director General of the UCI, the Union Cycliste Internationale. Before joining the UCI some 15 years ago, she worked for a number of major international legal firms based in Paris and in Switzerland. After leading the UCI's legal service, she became Deputy Director General and then took the top job, the first woman to do so in 2018. Thank you very much for joining us for Smart Cities and Sport, Amina Lanava. I hope you can hear us okay, Amina? Is Amina with us on the line? We're having some trouble with some gremlins in the internet this evening. Let's see if Amina is there. If not, we'll come back to her in a moment. I can't hear Amina, so I tell you what, let's move over. We'll actually take a look at the same question, but from a city perspective, a sporting city. Let's go to the normally vibrant visitor city in Orlando, Florida. For an interview that we recorded earlier, let's hear from the president and CEO of Greater Orlando Sport. That's Jason Siegel.
Our mission at the Greater Orlando Sports Commission is to drive economic impact on behalf of 4 counties: Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Lake County, and of course the city of Orlando. Of course, part of that work that we do includes marketing of our destination, promotion of our destination, and the last and probably the most interesting and tangible is that we are charged with being an aggregator of information, and we're supposed to and work very hard and pride ourselves on creating a collaborative environment for all of the stakeholders here in our community. So all of our venue operators, all of our teams, all of our leagues, all of our sports associations, we try to be the center of that hub and do the work on behalf of our entire sports ecosystem. Hosting is in our DNA here in Orlando. Of course, having welcomed 75 million visitors last year, we have a tourism community, a hospitality community that's very familiar with welcoming guests into our community. We have a wonderful international airport, 125,000 rooms. Like I said, 75 million visitors joined us most recently. 7 out of the top theme parks in the world are located here in Orlando. And of course, to be centrally located in between some of the greatest beaches in the world and our year-round terrific weather, make it an ideal location to welcome a number of sports properties here into Orlando. I think that having such a large regional footprint also helps us because we have over 30 venues that can host just about any sport other than snow sports. We can host any sport that might have an interest in joining us here. We have really wonderful venue management teams that are used to bringing big events into our market. We work in 4 major areas when we look for business to bring here. Youth sports dominates what we do here. Of course, with ESPN's Wide World of Sports, there's an awful lot of youth participation, certainly on Disney's campus, but also esports, national governing bodies for Olympic sport, the NCAA, university and college athletics, and major marquee events. We have a rich history here in our community of hosting marquee events. It all started when in 1994, we hosted FIFA's World Cup here back a little over 25 years ago. And then since then, many NCAA championships, high school championships, WrestleMania, the NFL's Pro Bowl, of course, a long list of international and Olympic soccer matches, and years of many years of American football college bowl games.
So when does it start? It starts with a mission, driven by a greater Orlando. It starts with a region united by a love for the game. When does it stop? It doesn't. Because here there is no off-season. It starts when you accept the challenge, when you share the love, when there's a reason to rally, when I becomes we. It starts when you have access to every court, every field, every moment. It starts when you have options. Lots of options. It starts when you come for the game, but stay for the magic. When we shoot for the belt, the cup, the gold. So when does it start? It starts when you say, go.
Our team started to work from home on March 16th of 2020. And that Friday prior, on March 13th, we started to evaluate and start to reimagine what our business might look like. And it was changing day to day. It was a very fluid, complex time. And we had through June 30th, we had 28 events here in the community on the books. We managed to successfully complete 6 of those events, which included the relocation of WrestleMania and a number of events, including, of course, our very famous Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. But 22 events were not completed. They were either canceled or rescheduled. That was a $44 million impact in the negative. And a number of those events were not able to be rescheduled because of the nature of the event. So for us, it was really about being able to then start to see if there was an opportunity to bring new events that had not been on the books for the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2020. And we've been somewhat successful finding outdoor events, whether they be running events or golf or fishing. We very successfully hosted an AAU volleyball tournament in our community back in over the course of during the summer. So we've had some success, but there's been a very significant negative impact financially.
Sports inspire us, teach us, keep us moving, and bond us. In this current world, without amateur, collegiate, and professional sports, we've noticed how quiet things have become. Sure, there's talk about normalcy, new this, and changing that. Truth is, things are tough. Our stadiums are empty, our ball fields are closed, and the cheers in our parks are just distant echoes in our minds. But this won't last forever. Now is the time to reflect on what these moments mean to us. Our weekly practices, our Saturdays spent in contest, our drive to win, and the teams that bring us together. Feelings so much bigger than the game. Competition has always taught us to persevere and push through, and we can do this too. We can rebuild. We can reimagine. We can recalibrate. We will collaborate. We will rise. We will recover. And we will play again.
Back in March of 2020, when the height of the COVID scare became very evident in our country, we had to rethink and reimagine just about all of our business decisions. And not only did we start to work from home, but we felt that it was very important that we ramped up communication between all of our event management folks and all of our venue management teams so that we could start to prepare for what a new normal might look like here in America. We assembled a number of those stakeholders and began to start having weekly meetings, and so that we could start to develop a new set of criteria, best practices, new protocols, new policies. And we're very fortunate in that so many of our stakeholders here locally had ties to Asia, they had ties to Europe. So a lot of what was already starting to happen with our friends across the world, we were able to aggregate a lot of that information. We have executives on our board of directors from the LPGA, so they were already starting to get back to play in Asia. And we have a lot of friends in international football. So a lot of those folks had already started to get back to the field, Bundesliga and so many others that had put policies in place. So we started to look for all of that information. And at the same time, a number of stakeholders here in the States, the NBA, MLS, they were putting plans in place. So for us, we were able to aggregate a lot of that information, start to put best practices in play, and work with our event organizers to either reschedule events or to host those events in a little bit of a different manner. And with that, we were able to either restart or reimagine. In some cases, it meant watch parties, it meant drive-ins and drive-throughs, and we had to change our model and look for new ways to do some of the business that we had done. Of course, not knowing how long the epidemic would last. And it was certainly a challenging period of time, but I'm proud that our community came together to handle it in the best way we could. Sure. So it's a phrase that I'm not sure who coined the phrase first, whether it was the NBA or it was MLS, Major League Soccer. But regardless, I think that what turned out to be a wonderful idea and the right idea and a smart idea was that there was a belief that if all of the critical workers, along with, of course, the athletes and a certain level of a number of people in management were brought onto the Disney campus, that we could test and be safe and take good care of all of those folks who were essentially inside the bubble for a period of time long enough, in both those cases, first to be able to host the MLS's back tournament and crown a champion. We're very proud that our Orlando City Lions made it to the finals of that, and of course, they lost that tournament to Portland, but also for a longer period of time for the NBA to come and successfully host the remainder of their regular season, the playoffs, and then of course the NBA Finals. And just a few days ago, of course, LeBron and team for the Los Angeles Lakers being able to win, in his case, his fourth NBA championship. And history will look back, and it will be something that will be a legacy for certainly the NBA and certainly for Orlando, that all playoff games in 2020 were played here in Orlando at on Disney's campus at ESPN Wide World of Sport. Well, the most obvious and the biggest difference was no fans live at the games. And of course, especially as you're talking about the energy and the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game, an MLS championship match, that's a big difference. And I think that certainly having no ticket revenue, no food and beverage, no parking, you're going to have a completely new revenue model that's solely relying on, social media, of course, television ratings. You have to drive that revenue through, linear and non-linear platforms. You're going to need creative solutions, and of course, these new digital opportunities that presented themselves. So I think some of the innovation, of course, having the technology where fans could log in and be able to watch their team. I did it myself. I thought it was incredibly enjoyable. It was kind of neat to virtually have a front row seat. But at the same time, I think that a lot of our properties, not just the ones in the bubble, whether it was AAU, which hosted a big volleyball tournament, traditionally that's 100,000 participants. And this year we had 10,000. We had the LPGA here. Our Orlando City team has gone back to playing in front of fans. And our UCF, the University of Central Florida football team, has gone back to playing in front of small crowds as well. So a lot of people in our community have had to pivot, and they've had to figure out how to do it a little bit differently. But like you say, there's certainly a new model, and we have to start to figure out how to be successful with that new model, because the profit and loss, the economics behind it are very, very different. It's a great question. I think that for every business, there are hard costs and there are soft costs. There are places in a budget where you can start to make changes, where you may be able to have savings in some areas, but in some other areas, your expenses are going to go through the roof. And certainly when it comes to safety, when it comes to making sure that we create a healthy environment for the athletes, a safe environment for the athletes, their families, fans that may come to these events, I think that only time will tell. The cycles have changed. We're so used to in America having the NBA play on Christmas. We're used to having the Major League Baseball All-Star Game be in the middle of the summer. We're used to the Super Bowl being played either the last week of January or the first week of February. So a number of these cycles have shifted, and that a great example, of course, international football is there's so many changes that have happened. And we're working with our partners. We're bidding on Gold Cup events. We're bidding on World Cup qualifying matches before the World Cup goes to Qatar. So we're trying to ebb and flow and move with the times, and certainly keep up with our partners, because so many of those dates are changing. They're changing on a day-to-day basis. And it's going to be very interesting when we look back 5, 10, 20 years from now to see what changes became permanent, and ultimately what changes were unable to be made because hopefully in some cases we'll resort back to cycles that we used to have in the past. We talk about it all the time in our office. Existing relationships matter. The investment that you make day to day, because you never know. Here, of course, in our community, in our small ecosystem within our sports community, everything changed drastically in a blink of an eye. So it was really, really important for us to have strong existing relationships, because all of a sudden you're going into a situation where you're going to have to lean on individuals that you've had these past relationships with, we had to become very innovative, and we had to make sure that we took every advantage of our collaborative and inclusive environment that we had here in Orlando. I think that because we had fostered that kind of an environment, we had success. I think, having had a tourism and hospitality community that had worked so closely together, I'm so proud of our elected officials, so many of the venue management teams that came together, so many of our hospitality executives, having to work hand in hand to pull these groups together. And I think that if your relationships are strong, you're going to succeed. If there were weak links, if there were torn threads, if there were individuals in the community that weren't pulling in the same direction, especially in difficult times, then you had the potential to become exposed. And no greater relationships, of course, than the president of our Orlando Magic, Alex Martins, working with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, and the work that they did. The relationship that Alex Leitao, who's the president of our Orlando City team, his relationship with Don Garber and the folks at MLS, all of that came into play. And I think it's the reason that we had success. And I think that ultimately, I'm not sure that I know whether we would do things differently, but I think time will tell as we look back and evaluate the decisions that we did make. Certainly the fact that we were able to have a successful MLS tournament, we were able to have the NBA championship awarded here in Orlando. Those certainly point to the notion that we did have success. We're very proud of that. But it's up to us not to sit back. It's up to us to plan for the future, take all the things that we've learned and prepare for what might be next. The epidemic has not subsided, and we certainly have to be ready for whatever lies in front of us. Well, I think it was widely reported that Russell Westbrook left an $8,000 tip for the cleaning service at the hotel that he was staying at on Disney's campus. So that was a really neat story. I loved seeing, the athletes, on Zoom chats, reading bedtime stories back to their kids. I think that, seeing the athletes, fishing on campus, learning to play golf for the first time. I think the really crazy notion that when the game was over, you both went back to the same hotel and you could run into each other after, playing a hard-fought match or a hard-fought game was really interesting. But I think that certainly the one thing that we're most proud of is, our tourism community has really gotten beat up. We've had furloughs and layoffs. Universal, Disney, our hoteliers, so many people in our tourism community, which is, as most know, we are a tourism and destination for folks around the world who love to travel, who are life enthusiasts, who are, love to come to Orlando, whether it's to see Mickey or Harry Potter or to come to SeaWorld. There's so many of our great attractions. We're very proud of the way our community came together to be creative and certainly find ways to move forward during these complex and very unusual times. It's that attention to detail and the way that we handled ourselves as a community that we feel is going to be an advantage as we look to bring future major events here, whether it's in the very near future. There's some discussion about NCAA tournaments coming to Orlando. And of course, the big prize, as we are a host city candidate and very much in pursuit of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And we are very much looking forward to safely welcoming our good friends from FIFA here to Orlando once they're able to visit from Switzerland. to join us for site visits and evaluations, and we can't wait for the opportunity to show the world yet again, not just in 1994 when we hosted successfully, but we're very much excited for the opportunity to host FIFA World Cup in 2026.
Jason, thank you so much for that. Clearly, some very tough times in the wonderful sporting city of Orlando, but a number of messages I took out from that. A particular one, I suppose, about collaboration across disciplines, across functions, but also his important message about the strength and depth of relationships that can be exposed for the good or less good, that generate innovation, generate resilience to come up with those new models that he talked about. And I guess also, I couldn't help noticing the idea of an $8,000 tip. I think there's a few restaurants near here that would welcome that particular diner. Jason, if you know where he is and he'd like to come to a restaurant around here, he'd be extremely welcome. Jason, if we can, we'll come back to you later on too. But I'm hoping if we have enough bits and bytes and wavelength and wave band, we can now actually hear from Amina Lanava, Director General of the UCI. Yes, you're there. Can you hear us, Amina?
Yes, I can. Hello, everyone.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And apologies that we had a few gremlins earlier on. But at least I hope it meant that you did have the opportunity to hear about that experience from Orlando. And I suppose in that context, I've got to just open up by asking you how cycling's doing. How's the UCI and how are you coping in these strange times?
So it has been very challenging for the UCI, for myself as well as the Director General of this organization, and for the sports in general. But now we are reaching the end of the new season that we build up together with the stakeholders, and we still have the Tour of Spain running, going on now, and we hope that the Tour of Spain will reach Madrid on the 8th of November. But so far we are quite pleased with what we achieved the last month.
And just how much was your calendar impacted, and how quickly did you have to turn things upside down?
So, of course, cycling as an overall sport has been hit hard by the pandemic. Nearly 3/4 of the events on the 2020 international calendar have been cancelled. It has been very difficult for all our 8 disciplines because at the UCI we were in 8 disciplines, so road, track, mountain bike, BMX racing, BMX freestyle, cyclocross, trials, and indoor cycling. So we are talking about indoor sports and outdoor sports. For some of them, we had no UCI World Championships or UCI World Cups. And we have to say that that's not happened since the Second World War. For us as well, the postponement of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games to 2021 was another big blow for us that we had to deal with. It had serious consequences for the organization of the sporting season because 5 of our 8 disciplines are represented at the Olympic Games, and of course an impact for all our activities. But happily, we didn't have all the race on our calendar which were cancelled, as I already said. We indeed decided very quickly to draw up new calendars later on during the year, hoping that the health situation would improve. And I think we were right to do so, and we have the proof today. So, as I said, we could have simply decided to just cancel the 2020 season and start working on a new season for 2021, as other sports decided to. But from the very beginning, we decided that we will not give up and that we will try to draw up these new calendars. And I have to say that it was a huge challenge. To give you an example, for the most important discipline of our federation, which is road cycling, we did set up a new calendar for the UCI World Tour and the UCI Women's World Tour, which is our flagship men's and women's world cycling series, in just a few weeks. So we had a 3-month window in which to fit in a world series of events that usually take place between January end October. And all of this happened with the agreement of all the organizers and other stakeholders. And of course, in addition, we had to organize these races in a health crisis. So it means that we had to come up with very strict protocols, health protocols, in a very short space of time. It was not easy at all because cycling is a sport that often takes place in public spaces, which is something we had to take into account. It was new for everyone. We are lucky enough to have a very good and excellent director medical at the UCI. We had the experience over the years of dealing with, let's say, crisis situation, but this pandemic is new to everyone, and it was a very difficult exercise to do, but we work all together and we managed to implement a comprehensive and effective plan, which was praised by the IOC through its president, Thomas Bach. In terms of cancellation,
I was going to ask, I mean, particularly about the decisions you had to make, I think, very quickly to move the World Championships, which I believe were originally planned to take place in Switzerland, and yet you had to find a completely new host.
Yeah, so actually, our Road World Championships, which is our main event of the year, the most important in terms of revenue and in terms of visibility for our federation. They were due to take place in Aigle-Martigny, so in Switzerland, at the UCI headquarters from the 20th of September. And we were informed of the decision of the Swiss authorities to cancel the event 12th of August. So it means less than 6 weeks before. So of course, this last minute news came as a huge disappointment for us. But as I explained previously, we didn't want to give up, and we wanted to find another venue at the same date. So we could have said, look, let's postpone at the end of the year, but we wanted to keep this window, so from the 20th of September, to find a new host. And it has been possible. Because we received a lot of interest from many countries. We received 5 very good candidatures, and at the end we chose the city of Imola in Italy, and we did organize this World Championships in only a few weeks. So that was a miracle, as I often say about what happened, and I'm very happy with it.
And that clearly says a lot about the hunger and the flexibility of those cities to be able to mount their bids so quickly.
Exactly, and but Imola, is very well known also to organize, the race, the Formula One races. It was also important for us to have a well-known city around the world, a city and a country as well that could welcome athletes from Europe, because we also had to make a very important decision. We decided to limit ourselves to elite category competitions only, meaning going from an 8 days program, so with 11 races, to a 4 days program with only 4 races. And the reason is simple. These categories are the most popular in terms of TV audience and the most important in terms of marketing visibility. So given the short time at our disposal to organize the World Championships, it seemed appropriate to favor them. It was a difficult but a necessary decision. And limiting ourselves to the elites also presented a practical advantage in the period of restricted international travel. The vast majority of elite athletes, European or not, are based in Europe. So they were therefore close to Italy, which was not the case for a large part of the riders of the other categories, juniors and under 23, who comes from America, Asia, and so on. So for us, it was, let's say, the most simple decision to take, and also in terms of revenue, the return on investment was most important.
So you're dealing, as you said, with health issues, with logistical issues, and then you moved on to the financial impact, because I guess the World Championships must be one of your very major revenue sources. Just how fundamental and how difficult was the financial aspect?
So, of course, not being able to have the Olympic Games and not being able to also have our Road World Championship, the two combined would have been a disaster for the UCI. So that's why we did not give up, and we really wanted to organize this Road World Championships, and we kept on fighting until the very last second to deliver this Road World Championships. So the first impact, of course, was in terms of finance, was the loss of all the money and resources we had invested in preparing the UCI Road World Championships in Switzerland. And in terms of revenues for the UCI, as our business model is very simple. It's based on managing a number of revenue streams, and one of them are the hosting fees. Of course, the region of Imola knows the value of the UCI World World Championships and the amazing ability it has to promote host interest when it comes to attracting tourism. But this last-minute switch meant that they were unable to take full advantage of the benefits that usually come with the UCI World World Championships and its operating period, which is around 12 to 18 months. So it was normal that investments had to be adapted, and that's what we did. We also sell the marketing and media rights across multi-year cycles, and that was one of the reasons why we absolutely had to stage the UCI World Championships in 2020 to honor our contracts and safeguard that important revenue. Luckily, the UCI has a very, faithful partner, and our relationships are based on trust. So they bought into the relocation project very quickly and fully committed to it. So it was also very important for us. And I think that the cycling family of partners has shown their faith in us, and for that they have been rewarded. So we had exceptional viewing figures for our Road World Championships in terms of TV audience and in social media promotion. So our partners were very happy. And I have to say again that it was really a miracle.
So once again, the importance of relationships with key stakeholders at those vital moments seems to be a major priority. But I wonder also whether any of these short-term make and mend changes that you had to make will have resulted in long-term shifts to your whole business model. Is this just temporary, or has it changed things for the long term in your business model?
So I think that we focused on the TV production and on the social media promotion. So we did invest a lot in these two areas for our Road World Championships. And I think that's something we're going to keep for the future. Because we got exceptional results in terms of TV audience, as I already said, and in terms also of social media and digital promotion. So that's something we're going to keep. Now, when we talk about the calendar itself, because as you probably know, the Tour de France had to be run during the month of September, when it takes place normally in July. So we really had to let's say to redraft the whole calendar. But I don't think we're going to keep that for the future. But in terms of business model, because we could not also benefit from all the VIP results that we normally have, we will have to stick with this new reality for the future as well. And we are working on making our business even more profitable for the coming months.
Amina, thank you so much for sharing those times with us. If you can stay on the line, please, and let's see if the technology will allow us to talk also to Jason in Orlando. Are you there still, Jason?
Can you hear me okay?
I can see you, Jason. Yes, I can even hear you as well. That's fantastic. Jason, I mean, cycling is not one of the sports that you talked about, but I wonder if you have any reflections on the experience you just heard about from Amina in the world of cycling. What stories, what lessons can you take out of that to your experience?
Yeah, I think the most obvious conversation that we have now is that we're successfully able to host events that are taking place outdoors. So we've found a way to host fishing events and outdoor competitions, whether they be Tough Mudders or any kind of road races or golf matches, as we've hosted everything from junior golf to LPGA and many different PGA events here, especially in the state of Florida. But I think, here in our community, that's made a world of difference because we've had to start to think about, as mentioned before, a new way to either have fans participate, which can certainly drive a little bit of revenue, not nearly what it would have driven had we been able to fill stadiums, whether they be indoor or outdoor, but also to come up with new and unique experiences for our community. And we're doing that. We have folks who are, large audio visual masterminds. I mean, they're just wonderful ideas, and they've brought them to life in such a short period of time. We were just on the phone the other day with a group called PRG here in the States that is working in Canada and the States on a number of different experience type activities that can be done outside, some of them in a drive-through manner. But I think, it doesn't matter where you are, in what part of the globe you are, we're all experiencing very similar challenges.
Jason, perhaps I can ask the same final question to both Jason and to Amina. Jason first. This is probably the question we're all asking ourselves right now. Do you have any sense of a timetable that you're working to that brings you back to normality, if ever? Or are you now working on the assumption that the world has changed, I'm now in a different business model?
I'm happy to answer. I think that for the last 28 weeks, we have had a series of 30, 60, and 90-day plans. And in some cases, we've been able to postpone and reschedule. And in other cases, as it relates to maybe college athletics here in the States, we either work within the structure of the way that the athletes' schedules have been for 100 years in our country, or we lose those opportunities. So I think our constant need to aggregate information, to collaborate, to be innovative, and to have, like you mentioned earlier, relationships are exposed in these scenarios because if you don't have the wherewithal to work together as either a community or a country, then you're going to find opportunities go by the wayside. So I'm not sure if I answered your question properly, but I think that time will tell. We want to make sure we're ready for lots of different scenarios. As I mentioned in the video, that the timetables have changed. I mean, we were used to Super Bowl on a certain weekend. We were used to Major League Baseball's All-Star game, at a certain time of year. And I think no more, when you take a look at international football and take a look at the cycle of play, and, when you start to come up against the next World Cup in 22, and of course, so many governing bodies are faced with these challenges, the Olympics having to be rescheduled for next summer, we're all in the same boat, trying to figure out how to do this safely, make sure that we keep the financial aspects in play. The NBA saved, it's reported, they saved probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion by moving forward and playing at an expense of probably somewhere, north of $100 million to make that happen. So I think all of us are doing the same thing. We're ready to move at a moment's notice. And I think we're seeing the best of who we are as sporting organizations because so many folks have been incredibly successful in their ventures.
Thank you, Jason. Let me throw exactly the same question then to Amina.
So I think that we will continue to live in uncertainty for some time to come. And I had a meeting today with my senior management team. That's exactly what we were looking at. And the plan for 2021 was, let's say, to still live in this kind of environment. So the good news is that we are gaining some experience in dealing with these situations. So 2021 will be less difficult in my view than 2020, but will not be easy at all. So that's what I would like to say. We will have to deal with this situation for still a long time.
Amina, thank you so much for joining us and for sticking through the slight technical glitches earlier. And Jason, thank you also for joining us over in the States. I'm dead jealous of your guitar collection, by the way. I guess we could all have hoped, all of us listening and watching this evening, that our guests could have waved a magic wand and given us the date when the world would suddenly feel ordinary again. But that's not the reality, is it? Instead, what we did have, I think, from both our guests here and then our 4 guests in the earlier session, was some really fascinating insights into fast adaptation, thinking on our feet, changing the model, collaborating, working with trusted colleagues, and keeping the show on the road and coming out in some cases with things which might be even stronger. Thank you very much to all our speakers. I'll be back with some more sessions tomorrow evening. And now back to Melanie.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for your contribution by facilitating this session. And thank you to all of the different speakers of the day. I think that you all proved, as Bill mentioned, the creativity and the ability to adapt to the situation. And it's great to see that international sports organization entities are able to adapt to the situation and able to continue to do sport and to organize events in a safe way. So thank you to all of you. From my side, I'm very, very glad of this very first day. I think that you all enjoyed it. I'm ready for tomorrow. For those of you who still have a little bit of time, I would be very glad to continue and to join you in the networking lounge. So if you are free tonight or today, this afternoon, or whatever is your time now, I'll be happy to discuss with you in the networking lounge. And tomorrow morning, we'll start again at 9 a.m. Swiss time, and we have a very exciting program for the entire day with 3 sessions dedicated to sustainability, gender equality, active tourism, but also good practices in the toolbox, also leadership skills, how to improve your skills in times of crisis. So I hope you will be with us tomorrow as well. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.